Prince Harry's sudden departure from Montecito has raised urgent questions, but what has unsettled royal watchers most is why he left, and what he is believed to have discovered before doing so. According to emerging reports, this was not a planned trip, not a public engagement, and not a routine break. It followed the discovery of private Soho House-related files connected to Meghan that Harry was reportedly unaware of until now. What makes this moment so emotionally charged is not scandal, but shock. Insiders describe Harry as deeply shaken, not by the existence of the files alone, but by the realization that parts of Meghan's past world may have remained compartmentalized, separate from the life they built together. The discovery reportedly occurred quietly, without confrontation, but its impact was immediate. Montecito, once symbolizing refuge and transparency, suddenly felt unfamiliar. Sources say Harry struggled with the weight of unanswered questions, choosing distance over reaction. Leaving was not an act of anger, but of emotional self-defense. Soho House has long been associated with privacy, exclusivity, and powerful connections. The resurfacing of related documents has reopened concerns Harry believed were already resolved. For someone who values openness after a lifetime of secrecy, this moment struck deeply. Those close to Harry describe a man replaying conversations, timelines, and assumptions. Not accusing, questioning, not reacting, processing. The decision to leave Montecito was reportedly driven by the need to think clearly, away from cameras, advisors, and emotional noise. This is not about betrayal being confirmed. It is about certainty being shaken, and when certainty disappears, even love pauses to catch its breath. The discovery that reportedly led Prince Harry to leave Montecito did not arrive with drama or raised voices. It unfolded quietly, through documents and references connected to a world Meghan once moved within, a world Harry believed he fully understood. The files linked to Soho House were not presented as accusations, but their existence alone introduced uncertainty where Harry thought clarity already lived. Sources familiar with the situation suggest that Harry encountered the material unexpectedly. What unsettled him was not a single detail, but the breadth of connections and timelines that appeared unfamiliar. For someone who has spent much of his life navigating half-truths and protected narratives, the experience felt uncomfortably familiar. Harry's reaction, insiders say, was internal rather than confrontational. He did not immediately question Meghan. Instead, he withdrew. This pattern reflects a long-established coping mechanism, stepping back to process before speaking. In this case, processing required distance, both physical and emotional. Soho House has long been known as a private network where influence, discretion, and opportunity intersect. The resurfacing of files associated with that environment reopened questions Harry believed were already resolved before marriage. The issue was not secrecy itself, but whether openness had been complete. Those close to Harry emphasize that this moment should not be interpreted as accusation. Rather, it represents disorientation. Discovering unfamiliar aspects of a partner's past can destabilize even strong foundations, especially when trust has been a central pillar of the relationship. Montecito, once a symbol of transparency and shared escape, became emotionally charged overnight. Familiar rooms took on different meaning. Routine conversations felt heavier. In that atmosphere, leaving became less about avoidance and more about preservation. Meghan's response, according to those aware of the situation, has been measured and restrained. She understands how quickly interpretation can become narrative. Her silence has been interpreted externally as strategy, but privately it appears rooted in caution, an awareness that reaction can inflame rather than resolve. The emotional imbalance that followed was not explosive, but subtle. Harry's need for space contrasted with Meghan's instinct to maintain structure. Neither response is unusual under stress, yet the contrast itself introduced distance. What makes this discovery particularly sensitive is Harry's history. His life has been shaped by revelations revealed through media rather than conversation. Control over personal narrative has always been fragile for him. Encountering unfamiliar information within his own home environment triggered old vulnerabilities. Friends describe Harry replaying moments, not in suspicion, but in search of coherence. When was this known? When was it shared? Were assumptions made rather than statements spoken? These questions lingered without immediate answers, and uncertainty proved heavier than any single detail. Importantly, there have been no reports of public confrontation, legal action, or dramatic fallout. The absence of escalation suggests intention rather than crisis. Both appear aware that visible reaction would invite further scrutiny. The files themselves, as described by sources, were not described as scandalous but contextual. Connections, timelines, memberships, communications, elements that gain weight only when viewed through the lens of expectation. For Harry, expectation had been built on transparency. Any perceived gap felt significant. Meghan's experience of this moment differs. Her past has long been dissected publicly, often without nuance. From her perspective, resurfacing associations may feel repetitive rather than revelatory. This difference in perception has shaped their responses. The emotional tension lies not in what was uncovered, but in how it was encountered. Discovery without preparation can feel like intrusion, even when intent is benign. That dynamic has reportedly influenced Harry's decision to step away temporarily. Those close to the couple stress that this is not a collapse, but a pause. Pauses can be necessary when emotions outpace conversation. Distance can allow clarity where proximity intensifies confusion. Still, the situation has underscored how fragile certainty can be under constant scrutiny. Living in the public eye magnifies private moments, turning internal reflection into external speculation. Harry's departure from Montecito has been interpreted widely, but those nearest to him describe it as a personal boundary rather than a public statement. Space in this context is not abandonment, it is containment. For Meghan, maintaining composure during this period has required emotional discipline. Silence does not erase pressure, it redirects it inward. Balancing understanding with self-protection is a delicate task. This moment has reopened a deeper question for Harry: whether complete transparency is ever achievable when past lives intersect with public narratives. The answer may not be clear, but the question itself has weight. As time passes, the focus will shift from discovery to dialogue. What matters most is not what was found, but how it is addressed. Trust is not undone by surprise alone, it is tested by response. For now, the space between them reflects processing rather than rupture. A moment of reassessment shaped by history, exposure, and emotional fatigue. Sometimes, the most difficult conversations do not begin with words. They begin with distance, chosen not to divide, but to understand. The emotional shift that followed Harry's discovery did not reveal itself through argument, but through hesitation. Conversations slowed. Assumptions that once felt settled began to feel provisional. Trust, often misunderstood as certainty, revealed itself instead as something more fragile, an ongoing process rather than a fixed state. Those close to Harry describe him as deeply conflicted during this period. His instinct was not to accuse, but to understand. Yet understanding requires context, and context was exactly what felt incomplete. The uncertainty unsettled him more than any specific detail could have. When clarity is expected and ambiguity appears, the emotional response can be disproportionate. Communication between Harry and Meghan reportedly became more deliberate. Words were chosen carefully, pauses extended longer than usual, not because honesty was absent, but because each recognized the weight their words now carried. In moments like this, even reassurance can feel inadequate until questions are fully explored. Meghan's approach has been described as controlled and inward. She understands how easily private explanations can be misinterpreted once they become public speculation. That awareness shaped her restraint. From her perspective, revisiting associations from the past may feel unnecessary, especially when those associations have been previously scrutinized without resolution. This difference in emotional framing has mattered. Harry experiences discovery as disruption, while Meghan experiences resurfacing as repetition. Both responses are rooted in lived experience, yet they move in opposite emotional directions. One seeks answers, the other seeks closure. The imbalance has not been dramatic, but it has been persistent. Harry's need for reassurance has grown quieter but more intense. Meghan's instinct to remain composed has grown firmer. These responses do not cancel each other out, but they do create distance when left unspoken. Friends of the couple suggest that Harry's departure was as much about protecting the relationship as questioning it. Space can prevent miscommunication from becoming resentment. Stepping away allowed him to process privately rather than react emotionally. The pressure of public attention has complicated this process. Every pause is interpreted. Every absence becomes a narrative. Harry is acutely aware of how silence is often filled by speculation, yet he also understands that premature statements can solidify misunderstandings. Trust, in this moment, has not been broken, but it has been examined. Examination can be uncomfortable, especially when it touches expectations that were never explicitly discussed. Transparency means different things to different people, shaped by past experience and personal boundaries. Meghan's understanding of transparency has been shaped by years of exposure. From her perspective, full disclosure does not require revisiting every association that has already been publicly misrepresented. Her priority appears to be forward stability rather than retrospective explanation. Harry's priority, however, has leaned toward emotional coherence. He needs narratives to align, past, present, and future, in order to feel secure. When alignment falters, so does ease. This divergence has not resulted in confrontation but in quiet recalibration. Both are said to be aware that reacting publicly would invite deeper intrusion. Instead, they are navigating this moment internally, away from advisors and cameras. The emotional cost of this restraint should not be underestimated. Suppressed reaction does not disappear, it accumulates. For Harry, the weight has manifested as withdrawal. For Meghan, it is manifested as composure under pressure. Observers note that this period may reshape how they communicate moving forward. Less assumption, more clarification, fewer expectations left unspoken. These adjustments often follow moments of emotional uncertainty. What remains significant is the absence of escalation. No statements, no visible division. This suggests that both recognize the long-term implications of short-term reaction. Patience, though difficult, appears to be guiding their choices. As time passes, the initial shock has softened into reflection. Questions remain, but they are being approached with intention rather than urgency. Emotional processing takes time, especially when it intersects with public narrative. Harry's distance has allowed him to regain a sense of internal balance. Meghan's steadiness has maintained external stability. Whether these approaches converge again will depend not on discovery, but on dialogue. Trust does not demand perfection, it demands understanding, and understanding often emerges not from immediate response but from space thoughtfully used. This moment, while unsettling, has created an opportunity, one defined not by exposure, but by honesty recalibrated. How that opportunity is used will quietly shape what comes next. As the situation unfolded beyond the walls of Montecito, the influence of royal history and media pressure became impossible to separate from personal emotion. For Harry, public interpretation has never been background noise. It has been a shaping force throughout his life. This moment reawakened that reality in ways he had hoped were behind him. The story quickly moved beyond private discovery and into collective speculation. Headlines framed absence as intention, silence as strategy, and distance as division. None of these interpretations could fully capture the internal complexity of what Harry and Meghan were navigating, yet repetition gave them power. Harry is said to be particularly affected by how quickly private moments are transformed into fixed narratives. Once a story hardens publicly, correcting it becomes nearly impossible. This has been one of his deepest frustrations since childhood, watching assumptions solidify before truth has time to breathe. Royal precedent has shaped this instinct. Within the monarchy, distance has often been used as protection. Silence has served as containment. Harry once resisted these methods, viewing them as emotionally isolating. Now he appears to understand their purpose more clearly, even if reluctantly. The irony is not lost on those close to him. The very systems he sought to escape now offer lessons he finds himself applying independently. Without institutional support, he is navigating the same pressures alone, relying on instinct rather than protocol. Media pressure has intensified this internal conflict. Commentary has blurred the line between observation and invention. The more limited the information, the more elaborate the speculation becomes. Harry understands this cycle too well, and its familiarity has been deeply unsettling. Meghan's experience with media interpretation differs in texture, but not intensity. She has long understood that restraint invites both criticism and curiosity. Her silence has been portrayed as calculated, yet those close to her suggest it reflects emotional discipline rather than manipulation. This difference in response has influenced how each experiences the pressure. Harry feels compelled to withdraw to regain clarity. Meghan feels compelled to remain composed to prevent escalation. Both are reacting to the same force, but in opposite directions. Royal history also carries emotional weight for Harry in another way. The resurfacing of unresolved questions echoes patterns he associates with loss and exposure. The sense that private realities can be overridden by public storytelling remains a profound source of anxiety. Observers note that this anxiety does not express itself through anger, but through caution. Harry is moving slowly, carefully, aware that impulsive reaction could deepen misunderstanding. This restraint marks a shift from earlier periods of his life, where reaction often preceded reflection. The broader public, however, rarely pauses for nuance. Stories evolve rapidly, filling gaps with assumption. Each new interpretation adds pressure to respond, even when response would offer little clarity. Meghan's steadiness during this period has served as an anchor, yet it has also drawn scrutiny. Her refusal to engage publicly has been framed as avoidance by critics and strength by supporters. Both interpretations miss the emotional labor required to remain silent under constant observation. What is often overlooked is the cumulative effect of years spent under scrutiny. Each episode compounds the last. Emotional fatigue does not announce itself dramatically. It settles quietly, influencing decisions in subtle ways. Harry's choice to step back reflects this fatigue. It is not a rejection of partnership, but a recalibration of endurance. Understanding his limits has become essential to protecting his emotional health. Royal observers suggest that this moment may influence how Harry and Meghan approach visibility moving forward. Not through withdrawal from public life entirely, but through firmer boundaries around narrative engagement. The monarchy's long-standing principle of never complain, never explain has often been criticized for its emotional cost. Yet in moments like this, its strategic value becomes evident. Silence can prevent temporary storms from becoming permanent scars. Still, silence carries its own burden. Without clarification, stories multiply. Managing that tension requires confidence and patience, qualities being tested now. Behind the scenes, decisions are reportedly being weighed carefully. Not about response, but about future exposure. What needs to be shared? What deserves protection? What can be left unanswered? This moment represents a convergence of past and present. Royal upbringing, media pressure, and personal discovery have collided, forcing reflection rather than reaction. For Harry, the challenge lies in separating external narrative from internal truth. For Meghan, it lies in maintaining composure without sacrificing emotional authenticity. Neither task is simple. Both require restraint in an environment that rewards immediacy. As attention continues to circulate, the most consequential choices are being made quietly. Not for headlines, but for sustainability. This is not a moment defined by scandal, but by endurance. A test of how much pressure can be absorbed without reshaping identity. And often, it is in these quieter tests, not the loud confrontations, that futures are most profoundly redirected.